thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed that little tour of my workspace, my living space. Today I'm going to talk about process, and I'm going to work through one permutation, and after I finish it, I'm going to learn a little bit, and then I'm going to make 5 sort of simultaneously, and I'll take you through my thought process as I do that. If you're enjoying this video, make sure you hit the like button, the thumbs up, and if you think you enjoy it in the future, why don't you hit the subscribe. And I really hope that you're gaining something out of this, some sort of insight into your own work or just into art in general. And if you are, please leave a comment below so I kind of get your feedback. Or just say hi. People might laugh at this brush, but I actually really like it. Especially for the work I'm doing right now. Obviously, it's not good for everything. But what's cool about it is you get a lot of dynamic kind of strokes from this brush. You could get stuff that looks kind of like individual bristles if you do it just right, and plus it just holds a lot of liquid, so you can splatter or just like put a lot of pigment on the page. So it really suits my purposes for this type of work. And I feel like it does capture, kind of the spontaneity that I'm trying to capture in this. And it creates some depth. Another technique for creating depth is to do multiple colors or multiple shades of a same color. And so I'm doing another gray, and this time adding some white to it to create like a different kind of tone. And it's lighter, but so when it goes over some parts of the previous gray, it'll be darker, and some parts it'll be lighter. But it definitely creates kind of like another layer and more depth. And maybe it's my background in oil painting, but I really like creating this depth, and it's very challenging with watercolor because just the material has some limits. It's just easier with oil paints to create really deep pieces. But I'm working with watercolors, and it's my job to try and figure out how to use it the best I can. So I think I'm doing an okay job creating some depth here. To create sort of further contrast, I'm using charcoal. I'm using a combination of sort of like sweeping, broad strokes and something that looks a little bit more almost like language or characters. There's a term for this. It's called asemic art, and it's something I discovered more recently, but basically it kind of is the attempt to create something that looks like language without actually using language, which I find very interesting, and I probably will continue to use that technique in some pieces in the future. So I began adding layers of pink, which was always my intention. I knew that starting this piece, I had a color palette in mind, which was just basically gray, pink, and white. And I'm using both a brush and a palette knife to create these textures. It's sort of at this point that I realize that I've gone too far with the pink, and it wasn't my initial intention. And this sort of like is where I started thinking about how it would have been helpful if I was doing more than one piece at the same time. I had this bit of collage element of Chinese text, which in a way is almost like asemic text for me. With the Chinese text, there is a possibility that there's a meaning that could correspond to the piece, which also kind of reminds me of surrealist artists. They used to use chance to create their art to see if there would be like an accidental meaning. So now I'm adding lines using the gel pen, and I'm doing two different techniques of lines. My more traditional permutation style, and then just these sort of dense lines as well. Overall, I'm happy with the final product, but it seems like there are many things I would do differently. I will come back to this color palette and try again. But first, let's make some caramel nut bars. I think sometimes we learn more from our mistakes than we do from our successes, and sometimes it's easier to see what went wrong rather than what went right. In this piece, I think what happened was I knew that the white pen and the pink were going to be, there wasn't going to be a lot of contrast between the two, and I accepted that and was anticipating that, but what happened was I applied just too much pink, and what ended up happening was that like there just wasn't enough contrast overall in the piece. And also what happened was I liked how one side worked more than the other side. The right side, the type of line work I did ended up looking better, and it's partially because there's less pink, but it's also just I think it worked better. So as I was looking this over and finishing up, I was realizing that maybe if I'd done several pieces simultaneously where I was like kind of learning as I went in a way, I might have come up with some better finished pieces. So we'll embark on creating 5 pieces in a slightly different color palette, but sort of still reminiscent of this first piece that I did. So let's watch that. So I think one of the first benefits of working in series is the conservation of materials. I try to conserve normally when I work, just by the simple fact of like not throwing out used watercolor paint. I don't immediately rinse out my containers, I save them. But I only have so many containers and only so much room to store everything. So, and some of the paints don't re-wet very well. So it's just like not the most optimal. So using a series technique like this, I'm able to use, I can just use the same paint in several paintings all at once and not worry about like having to dump paint at the end or anything like that. There's also to take into consideration the conservation of work. Re-wetting paint that's in the containers and also remixing is really time consuming. It often takes more time for me to create my paint, to prepare my paints as it does to actually paint the paintings. Especially again with these sort of like abstract gestural pieces, it's like the mixing of paints is far more time consuming than the actual painting itself. Another benefit of working in series like this is this sort of lowering of stakes in my own mind. I've noticed that I tend to be more carefree and experimental when I work, which basically I just feel like the stakes are lowered for each individual piece because I'm like not investing all of my emotional energy into a single piece. It's like I put one piece of paper down in front of me and I play, and then I know I'll just grab another one. So it's it just lowers the stakes and it makes me feel a little bit more free, which is really a good benefit. Another really good benefit of working in series like this is cohesion. If you plan on selling your work, having on hand several pieces that kind of go together is really beneficial. If you have multiple pieces that look like they belong together, a prospective buyer may buy a series rather than just a single piece. And the same goes for a gallery who's putting together a show. Leading up to publishing this video, I was posting the individual pieces I created in this video on my Instagram, and I had a buyer reach out to me and wanted to buy one of the pieces. And because I had several pieces that were similar, well, they bought one of the larger sizes. And so I had one other one from this series that was like perfect to go with it. So I told them, and they asked to see the other one, which I hadn't even put on Instagram yet, and they ended up buying both pieces. So that was a really good, like I say, it's a good benefit. Another benefit is the conservation of time. I finished all 5 of these pieces in just 2 days, and probably if I had done more, I probably could have also finished them in about the same amount of time. I think the line work takes a lot of time, but every other portion is less. And I think if I would have tried to do each one of these individually, it just mentally it takes up a lot of space to work on a single piece, but it almost frees you to try and make multiple simultaneously. I mentioned before about being more spontaneous and adventurous, and I think this piece is a really great example of that. I don't think this piece would have happened if I did it on its own. If I didn't give myself the permission to just do this sort of Jackson Pollock-like splatter and then move on. And I really love how it came out. I think it's my favorite of this series. Again, I don't know if that's going to happen every time, but it definitely seems like a clear benefit to this type of working. I'll just say, I think that these pieces least look like the permutations, but here you see me using the template, and it proves that I'm still using it as sort of the basis for the pieces. And I just think that's really fun. I wasn't an abstract painter really before I started Permutations, and in some ways I don't think of my work as completely abstract because I use the permutation template. In a way, I think that all of my paintings are representative of this shape, which is not strictly speaking abstract. It's geometric, and it's not a thing that exists in nature per se, but it's still like a concept that is quantifiable. So I just think that's an interesting thing about my series. Is I tell people I'm a geometric abstract painter, but really, I think that I'm not so abstract because I use the permutation template. But I guess it's all up to people's interpretations on what abstraction is. I think this addition of paint marker was vital for the finished pieces. It created just this little bit of bling, a little bit more movement, and a little bit more warmth. And I'm happy I added them. I've made several pieces in the past with this color palette, and I really like it. I really enjoyed doing this series, and I hope you enjoyed watching. I'd love to hear your thoughts about these pieces, so leave a comment below. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.